LSSNCA, we have been serving the metro area for over 100 years. These services have definitely shifted with what the community needs and how we can best serve the community. Currently, our service areas are children and family, health and wellness, community services, and then we have our Bold Journey Scholarship Fund. Just a few facts from our last fiscal year, which ended with the start of October. Our sites in Woodbridge, Fairfax, and Hyattsville, we served 544 refugee clients. That's actually a good amount of people for the very low refugee ceiling that was set. 94% of those clients were actually Afghan special immigrant visa holders, which Dr. C will talk about. We placed 20 unaccompanied refugee minors in loving foster homes here in DC as well as in Maryland. And we provided healthy relationships education to over 280 students in DC. We were just granted an extension of this program where we will serve over 1,000 students in DC and PG County in the next 3 years. So that's a huge expansion for that program. Finally, we still are hosting some of our traditional programs like our Youth Haven Kids Camp. That Kids Camp actually went virtual this year during the summer so that we can make sure we entertain the kids and taught them leadership skills, engaged with them, even while they were stuck at home due to coronavirus. And finally, just to show you what some of our programs are, our children and family services include adoption services and break the seal in order to reunite an adoptee with a birth parent. Our URM foster care, if you're interested in fostering a refugee youth, you can look on our website at lssnca.org for more info. Our community services, which includes refugee and immigrant services, helping refugees be welcomed and integrated into our communities, employment development for refugees, immigrants, SIV holders, and asylees for up to 5 years of their granting of status in the US, citizenship and immigration services as well. Finally, our health and wellness services include that youth development and wellness programs, including our Youth Haven and Healthy Relationships, as well as a new program that started in the spring, the Migrant Support Services Program, where we're providing therapeutic care and trafficking screenings for immigrants in the DMV.
I wanted to start with some definitions so that we know the different categories of refugees or immigrant that we are serving, because as you know, the landscape of refugee resettlement or refugees in general is very complicated, and the terminology as well. So starting with the definitions could clarify each one of these categories, and that would help as we start talking about the policy priorities for the next administration and LSS as well as we welcome the new administration. You may have heard several terms: refugees, SIVs, asylees, immigrant and migrant, used interchangeably. And that is not always very helpful when it comes to defining these different categories. So I will start with what we call traditionally a migrant. A migrant is what we call a temporary movement. So that means it could be within the boundaries of the same country or the same state. I'll just give you a concrete example. If someone who lives in California decide to move to Maryland during the crop season in Maryland and spend 3-4 months there working in that industry and go back to California, that person is a migrant. So to be a migrant, you don't have to be outside of the United States. You don't have to cross an international border. You just need to move from one area to the other for a specific temporary objective. An immigrant could be any one of us. So if any one of us today chose to cross the border and settle in either Mexico or Canada and make that country their primary residence, that individual in that country is an immigrant. So for a migrant, you don't have to cross an international border or to leave your country. for an immigrant, you have to settle outside of your country and have that place be your primary residence to be an immigrant. Now, if you define it in such a way, refugees are part of immigrants, but there is a huge difference between an immigrant and a refugee. An immigrant is someone who willingly chose to cross a border and settle in another country, and at any time can go back to their country of origin. A refugee is someone who was forced to flee and as a result does not want to go back or cannot go back to their country of origin. And in the refugee world, you have to cross an international border and avail yourself to the protection of the host country for the individual to be deemed a refugee. Now, if you look over the past 70 years, the definition of refugee itself have evolved. If you go back to the 1951 Geneva Convention, was defined as refugee only individuals that came from Europe and that was fleeing event related to World War II or that occurred before January 1st, 1951. So the rest of the world, regardless of what events occurred, folks that were fleeing those conflicts were not deemed refugees. Now that definition was then amended in 1967 with what we call the Protocol of 1967. And those two restrictions, so what we call the temporal restriction and the geographic restriction, were lifted. So you no longer have to be from Europe, and the events that you're fleeing do not have to be event related to World War II or occurring before January 1st, 1951. An asylee is someone who is either in the United States or at a port of entry and sought and obtained protection in the US. Now, let's say you are a student from any country and you are in the United States under a student visa, but a conflict broke in your country and you cannot go back to that country. As a result, you can seek to remain in the United States and become an asylee. The other options or the other scenario that we see are individuals that are fleeing from over the past several years. We have seen from Honduras, Salvador, and Guatemala. Southern border, at the port of entry, seek to get the benefit of being asylum. Now, the backlog of asylees as of 2019 were 338,000 people. Refugees around the world, it's 26 million refugees. Now, if we factor in the IDP, which are the internally displaced people, and the stateless people, that's almost 80 million forcibly displaced around the world. And the majority of those refugees do not come to the United States or to developing countries. A majority live outside of the United States and in very poor countries. It is only a very tiny portion of the world refugee population get a chance to be resettled. Now, if someone flees his or her country, the most desirable option for them is a safe return in their country of origin. Most desirable, the least likely to occur. The second option is what we call the local integration. That means staying in the first country of asylum and being able to gain citizenship or to leave safely in that country. It's only when those two options are no longer viable, safe return in the country to the country of origin, or local integration, that refugees are availed with the option of being resettled in a third country. So of the world population, refugee population, less than 1% get a chance to be resettled in a third country. It's a very lengthy process. On average, it takes about 3 years for someone to complete the process and be resettled as a refugee. The SIV, it's even almost longer because it takes an average of 357 days for an SIV to complete the entire process and be resettled. Now, what is an SIV, a special immigrant visa holder? The difference between refugees and asylees is that refugees are individuals that fled their countries, went to another country, crossed an international border, and sought and obtained protection and were processed from there. SIVs do not have to leave their country. Now, you remember after September 11, when we went to Afghanistan and Iraq in March of 2003, there were a lot of Iraqis and Afghans that assisted the United States Army, the United States government. Those individuals who have provided faithful and valuable services to the US government, and as a result of their involvement with the US government, were not able to stay or safely in their country. They were deemed traitors by some of their community members. Their lives were at risk. Those individuals were given the option to be resettled in the United States under that visa. So it's a temporary visa. The SIV started in 2006 with very limited numbers. Around maybe 50 individuals were resettled in 2006. Then it was expanded a little bit in 2008, and the Iraqi program continued all the way to 2014, whereas the Afghan program continued up until now. Now, on average, we see between 4,000 and 10,000 SIVs resettled, and we have seen over the past 10 years or so, over 60,000 or 70,000 SIVs resettled in the United States. Now, the majority of those that are resettled in the DC area are SIVs from Afghanistan, although we have seen in 2008 a lot of SIVs from Afghanistan as well. Now, the processing internationally involved the State Department, the USCIS, and a lot of NGOs. So that's a partnership between the federal government and NGOs on ground for refugees to be vetted. They go through layers of vetting before those individuals are resettled in the United States. Now, the refugees processed overseas are put into two pools. The first one is what we call the US tie. That means they have family members in the United States. And if they do, then the priority will be given to the refugees or to the SIVs to be reunited with their loved ones. And the second pool is what we call no US tie, meaning that they do not have a family member in the United States. And as such, they can be resettled in any part of the United States, provided that locally services exist that can help meet their needs. Now, over the past several years, what we have seen under the current administration is that the refugees numbers have gone from 85,000 refugees the last year of the Obama administration to 11,814 resettled in FY 2020. Now, keep in mind that every day, 30,000 people become refugees. 37,000 people become refugees every day. And the US resettled 11,814. So the number that we resettled in FY 20 equates to 7 hours of the world refugee flow. So that tells you how tiny the portion of refugees being resettled is. But those low numbers have huge impact, not just domestically, but internationally as well. Because as you know, the resettlement numbers or the health of the resettlement numbers depends on the health of the pipeline overseas. That means when processing overseas is delayed, then it impacts the domestic resettlement, because those refugees will then linger in refugee camp for many years before being resettled in the United States. The low refugees determination, presidential determination over the past several years under the Trump-Pence administration have resulted in many of those NGOs that were processing refugees overseas cutting their staff. So that means we have less staff overseas processing refugees to arrive in the United States, and domestically we have less staff to be able to welcome those refugees. Now, it is good news that the current or the upcoming administration is willing to go back to a healthy pipeline of refugees or higher refugee ceiling. And it is important to mention that there is a difference between the ceiling and the goal. So we should not be insisting on the ceiling. We need to insist on making the ceiling the goal, because any administration can come in and set the ceiling at 200,000 refugees and yet only resettle 2. So it is not how high is the ceiling, is how high or close we get to the ceiling that should determine the number of refugees to be served in the United States. So what we're hearing from the current administration is that those ceilings will be bumped up, and we will see maybe 100,000 refugees in FY 2021 and 125 in FY 22 and beyond. Now, it would be very hectic to get to 100,000 refugees in FY 2021, and for several reasons. One is that we almost would have lost a quarter of fiscal year 2021. And for the US to resettle 100,000 refugees in FY 2021, we will need an average of 15 to 20,000 refugees for the remainder of the fiscal year. Now, that could be doable, but it would require a lot of logistics, both abroad and domestically, to make that happen. The FY 2022, reaching 125,000 refugees could be doable. But it is also worth mentioning that the United States have not resettled 100,000 refugees since 1994. So for over a quarter century, we have not reached that number. Reaching that number would require a lot overseas, but domestically as well. Agencies like LSS would need to engage local communities to do a lot of community outreach and community capacity as well. Because as you know, when a large number of refugees is heading to a very specific area, it could overwhelm services in that area. So what we ought to be doing over the next several months is to spread those numbers by opening new sites so that the impact of high number of refugees will not overwhelm one community. And by sharing the responsibility and spreading those numbers, we could ensure that each refugee group is heading to an area that can receive adequate services. We also would need to work with congregations. As you know, the congregations are the backbone of the U.S. resettlement program. And refugees, as I always say, are not refugees of the resettlement agencies. They are refugees of the communities that welcome them. These are not folks that will be here for a few months. They're here to stay and to be part of the fabric of this nation. So getting the buy-in of those communities and the support of congregations and support of local communities is key in having a successful resettlement program. The Biden-Harris administration top priorities are to reunite separated immigrant families. As you know, over the past year or so, as a mean to deter immigration, mainly from the southern border, families were separated. And as a result, we have over 600 children that are not being reunited with their loved ones because we cannot locate, the US government cannot locate those families. Ending the Remain in Mexico policy. This was something that occurred under the Trump-Pence administration, and that resulted in asylum seekers that usually are processed at the border, port of entry, are now asked to wait overseas in Mexico while their cases are being adjudicated in the United States. The third priority is what we call the Dreamers. So those are children that, or individuals that came to enter the United States as children to not fault of their own. And as a result, the program was created by the Obama administration back in 2012, if my recollection is correct. And the Trump administration have tried several times to do away with these programs. And a series of lawsuits has halted. And recently, the Supreme Court decision has shown that the US government does not have a ground to, or the Trump administration doesn't have a ground to stop the program. So hopefully by helping reunite the families that were separated through over the past couple of years, ending the remaining Mexico policy and reenacting the and expanding the Dreamers, as well as increasing the ceiling, will help the United States go back to being the pathfinder for the rest of the world. Now, it is, we should keep in mind that the rest of the world look at the United States as a mirror. So if we do not extend or expand our protection to vulnerable populations here or abroad, that will result in a lot of other countries doing the same. And with an increasing number of asylum seekers and refugees around the world, that is not a viable option for the rest of the world. But the U.S. refugee program and LSS cannot do the resettlement on its own. So we will need the support of the communities. We will need the advocacy of everyone on this call, and we will need housing providers. We'll need donations for us to be able to support and welcome those new Americans that we expect over the next several months.
Thankfully, this new administration coming in, like Mamadou said, is going to be fairly pro immigration and refugee resettlement, and try and bring in as many refugees and immigrants that our communities in our country can resettle, and at our largest capacity, while also building up the capacities for processing both at the border and abroad. So even though this administration is very pro refugee resettlement, much more progressive on immigration, we still need your help and your voices. So as Mamadou said, the president sets the number of refugees that come into the country. However, there are a lot of factors that your members of Congress and even your state and local legislators have some control and sway over. First of all, we must ask that our representatives, our Congress members, they hold the administration accountable. As Mamadou said, that we reach the level of people that the administration says they're going to allow in. So if the refugee ceiling is set at 100 or 125,000, that we try and reach that number. Additionally, the Congress must set the appropriations that go to the State Department, to the Homeland Security, and as well as the Office of Refugee Resettlement at Health and Human Services. So those funds help us as a local resettlement agency resettle our clients, provide them with their grants for housing, for covering the family in the first 90 days, as well as their health services, employment services to get them employed as soon as possible. So it is very important that regardless of who your representative or senator is, that you reach out to them, you tell them that it is important to you, it is important to these clients that this money is appropriated at the level that the president is setting in the presidential determination. Additionally, we look forward to being able to resettle Syrians again, Somalians. There's many groups of refugees that the United States is currently blocking from coming to the US, and what was known as the Muslim ban, or a ban on individuals from specific countries. So with that being lifted, we're going to be welcoming new communities of people here to the DMV that we haven't been able to welcome these last 4 years. Or we have welcomed across the US, but it's slowly diminished. So to be able to build up that community, provide services, make sure that these individuals are getting cultural orientation, that they are introduced to their communities, maybe get them involved back in their religious community that they practice as well. So as Mamadou said, we need you all here as welcomers. Getting involved with our work as volunteers, as donors, that gives you experiences to be informed when you reach out to your representatives. It's important that you are able to share with them your personal experiences. We don't want our representatives to only ever hear negative comments. They get a lot of negative calls to their offices. Well, how about sharing stories of community growth, of welcoming, of the positivity that refugees and immigrants bring to the community, and specifically to their constituency? That is extremely important to our members of Congress. One way you can search online, and there's govtrack.us is one of the websites you can use to locate your congressperson if you don't know who that individual is, as well as your governor and your state representatives. Those state representatives can be important as well, because there's issues at the local level and state level that do affect refugees and immigrants just as they affect all of us. So schooling, housing, cash assistance programs, Medicaid programs, all of that goes into resettlement beyond the direct arrival of a refugee family. So we urge you to call your constituency's representative, to send emails to them, and to sign on to letters. Get your, especially like religious leaders, a leader in the community, to sign on to letters that go to Congress or go to the Secretary of State or to the President. If you need any help forming those conversations with some script that will help you make a call, or that will help you put in your experiences, we can certainly help you with that. Our advocacy team can be reached at advocacy@lssnca.org, and we're more than willing to walk you through that. In the spring, we'll also be doing, hopefully we'll be able to do them in person, but I guess we'll see, visits with Congress to during the World Refugee Day month in June, to expose our Congress members and their staff to refugee resettlement issues and to the immigration issues and how they affect us locally. It's very important that individuals like you who are on this call, that are informing themselves, that are learning more about the policy and the action of local resettlement agencies, it's important that individuals like you are on these calls and in these meetings with members of Congress, because you're informed. And nothing is better to a representative than to meet with an informed individual, or an individual as well who has gone through the process of resettlement and immigration to the U.S. And as I said, volunteering and being involved with our programs and our organization is a great way to, one, welcome refugees and immigrants to your community locally, but also to gain positive experiences that you can then share with your friends, your family, as well as those members of Congress.
We really value a strengths-based approach, not just for the families that we serve, but for the volunteers and the community partners that work alongside us and really help make our work possible. So I like to encourage individuals and groups and faith communities to really reflect on their strengths, either individually or as communities, their strengths and their resources, and to really consider how they can use these to support and uplift the strengths and resources of their refugees or their refugee and immigrant neighbors. So, so to kind of dive right in, at the individual level, we have lots of different volunteer opportunities to get involved. So through our family and youth mentoring programs, for example, volunteers can really walk alongside of our refugee clients. And so these days, that looks like virtually walking alongside them through virtual mentoring. So everything is on Zoom or other, virtual platforms. And to really help clients navigate their new communities on the journey towards self-sufficiency and integration. So family mentors really serve as friends, as advocates, as community navigators. During clients' reception and placement services, they do receive a cultural orientation session for a couple of hours. So mentors really extend that cultural orientation into 6 months. for those of you who have, maybe lived in a different country, or just in terms of like cross-cultural experiences, we all know that you can't learn and adjust to a new culture, a new community in 2 hours. So the mentorship piece is really, really vital to our work in serving clients. Mentors really help with job readiness needs, like through interviews, interview prep, resume building, ESL needs, navigating the public school system, really learning their new community, for example, setting up a public library account, and just really working with the case manager to help meet the family's goals. For youth clients, usually 15 to 24 years old, mentors can help with education and career exploration, navigating processes like applying for scholarships, and other goals like leadership and civic engagement. So mentors really are part of the heartbeat of our volunteer programs. Since the start of COVID, we've also launched a virtual family tutoring program, which is a shorter commitment for volunteers, but really focuses on homework help, subject-based tutoring, and ESL conversation practice for both children and their parents. And that's all virtual. And we will soon be launching a virtual women's club that's volunteer driven for our female clients, focused on pre-employment training, health, computer literacy, and special skills like micro enterprise workshops. And we have other volunteer opportunities as well, in supporting our case management teams, our employment services teams, immigration services, and just helping with like special events, blogging, advocacy. There's so many different ways to get involved, and any strengths, any skills that you want to bring to us and figure out, a way to get involved, we'd love to work with you. And tell your friends. But yeah, since COVID, all of our volunteer and internship opportunities are remote or hybrid, and our volunteer orientations are held about every 3 weeks virtually. For groups who want to volunteer, the special program that I like to highlight is our Good Neighbor Partners Program, or GNP. This is our refugee co-sponsorship program where a group of people, so maybe a faith congregation or an organization or even a family, can be matched to co-sponsor a newly arrived refugee family. So the GMP will provide a home setup, which includes collecting or purchasing essential items for the family's apartment, so like furniture and kitchen supplies and cleaning supplies, and then the option of providing ongoing adjustment support for up to 6 months or 1 year, depending on their level of GMP commitment. In addition to being friends and advocates and community navigators, a GMP group can really embody a sense, like a network of support for a new family, and that typically results in a long-lasting relationship and friendship with that family. So since the start of COVID, we've adapted the program so GMP partners can maintain all COVID health guidelines and still support families even in the apartment setup process. So through fundraisers, through online wish lists, so shipping and delivering supplies online, and then also virtual GMP family tutoring or mentoring. We also work with groups to figure out other ways to volunteer and serve our clients as well, based on strengths and interests. So, for example, recently a high school student club actually started a Sunday stories program through Zoom for our younger clients, so they can tune in to interactive story time and games and activities. So, we're always eager to engage groups in different ways. But another way is by organizing a donation drive. So we are always looking for essential items for our families. So kitchen supplies, cleaning supplies, toiletries, especially as we look to next year. in the future when we're expecting to resettle more families, this is going to be incredibly important to have, that we can give to newly arriving families. We just wrapped up our annual coat drive, which was virtual for the first time, and some of you might be on the call and have participated, so thank you, including Starbucks, all of our amazing Starbucks stores in Virginia especially. So this is our first virtual one. We matched up groups and donors with families to provide coats and winter clothing, and we actually were able to serve 240 clients. So that includes 34 families and 60 asylee clients. So that's all thanks to our amazing community partners. So in addition to those essential items that I mentioned, other major donation needs include blankets and comforters, especially in the colder winter months as we're kind of easing into winter, baby supplies, sewing machines, especially for our female clients, bikes, cell phones, and laptops. Those tend to be top three just high priority needs constantly. So yeah, so those are some to keep in mind. But we usually list our major donation needs in our monthly e-newsletter, so be sure to check that out. And we also have a holiday blessing campaign coming up this month. So in the next few days, you'll probably see more information about that, but that's going to be a gift card donation drive to collect gift cards for our clients. So for example, to Walmart or to Amazon, and these really go a long way in helping clients purchase items for their family needs list, but also their wish lists for the holiday season. So we'll be sharing more information about that. But we just really appreciate, the work of the volunteers and our community partners, and just all of the creative ways that the community has really come together to support our clients. So thank you, and continue to spread the word, like Dana mentioned, and like Mamadou mentioned earlier too. We really rely on our community to serve and to welcome our clients. So we appreciate you, and thanks again.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jody Hannity, and I'm the program lead for Area 78's Welcoming Refugee Alliance. Our mission is to welcome, empower, and advocate for refugee partners and allies while strengthening and enriching their global Starbucks experience. As a company, we have a huge obligation to show up for our communities. I would like to help and support any partner or new friends on today's call to direct you to your local resources to get you involved to make an impactful and huge difference in our local refugee lives. We encourage you to be a part of your community and continue to help support the LSSNCA and our local Welcoming Refugee Alliance. I would love the opportunity to introduce three more of my peers. Brittany Winters.
Hello, everyone. Oh, everybody can see me. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Winters, and I am the area lead for the World Refugee Alliance in the same district as Jody in 784 in Northern Virginia. I believe in our mission to empower and advocate for refugee partners and allies and ensure they have a wonderful, Starbucks experience, but also that they are set up for life just as much as you guys do at the LSSNCA. Our company's mission is to uplift and inspire one another, and that is what I plan to do as an area lead, to uplift refugee partners and allies and inspire partners and allies to join our alliance as well in our company and across communities and make a huge impact as well. So that is one of the things that I want to do and want to bring to the World Refugee Alliance. So I hope we can get more people to join and increase our membership. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, Brittany. It's my pleasure. I would like to introduce Yemi. She's the co-chair.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yemia Klilu. I'm a district manager for Starbucks over in the Columbia, Maryland market. So, and I've been with Starbucks for 18 years. And my story is kind of similar to many of the clients that you guys have. You know, I migrated from Ethiopia in the early 90s on a political asylum with my parents. So the stories of your clients hit home for me. So because of that, I have the opportunity to make a difference through the work that Starbucks does. So our chapter for the Mid-Atlantic was the first chapter of the Alliance in the network. So we are growing it as much as we can and building partnership with groups like yours in order for us to make a big impact. So besides doing the drives and the mentorship, we also have an initiative to hire refugees into our stores. So we want to see what we can do to partner us with you guys so we can support the hiring process, and also understanding the cultural differences when you migrate from a different country and how we can make it easier for them to work in our stores. So I look forward to working with you guys and learning more about how we can make a bigger impact.
Thank you, Yemi. That was wonderful. I would love to introduce Angela Swope.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela. I'm actually on the leadership team from the Welcoming Refugees Alliance here in Seattle at our home office. In 2017, our founder, Howard Schultz, announced our goal of hiring 10,000 refugees to Starbucks by 2022. That goal has slowed down a bit because of all the issues that you've already discussed. So the comprehensive coverage of the issues at hand was so helpful. So thank you so much for covering all of that. It was so informative, and we've experienced that really personally. So at the time of that announcement in 2017, I was a store manager on the East Coast in Boston, and I had 3 refugees on my staff, just totally coincidentally. And I just got to like cry with them in the back room about how excited we were for them to feel so like seen and valued by our company. And we just really feel like viscerally as a company that we're better people, like we're a better company and we're a better country because of our diversity and because refugees are part of the fabric of our nation. So I just knew that to be true in my own heart at my own store. So to be a part of growing our company that way is just really special. So store managers throughout the company are learning more and more about how they can support hiring refugees on their staff. So our role as an alliance, as a partner network, is to help support, especially store managers, to be able to hire refugees on their staff in their communities. So having partnerships between Starbucks and organizations like yours is so impactful for us too, to meet our goal of welcoming refugees, because you can talk to any store manager in the whole company and they'll tell you that staffing is like the hardest part of the job. And we know that there's a gap between this population of people who want a job and us who want these wonderful people to work in our stores. So we have a long road ahead, but it's so exciting to hear the hope that so many organizations like yours bring to what we hope to see in the future.
That's so awesome, Angela. Thank you so much. On behalf of the WRA and our awesome Starbucks partners, I want to extend our sincere appreciation with our partnership with LSSNCA.
Correct. Because of the restriction that comes with the federal funding, we cannot assist asylum seekers access benefit, but once they are approved, they are eligible for the same services and benefit just like any other refugee. We do have immigration services that can assist some of them through their legal needs, but when it comes to accessing the refugee benefits, unfortunately, it is not available to them until they are approved.
But there are so many organizations in the area that do work with asylum seekers that we definitely tell you to look into. IUTA is one of those organizations, Catholic Charities, as well as Asylum Works. So the Asylum Seeker Assistance Program, and they particularly look at employment for these individuals that are still in their asylum processing?
So when we did our youth hiring event, we usually host seminars for the youth to build skills, so customer service or resume building and whatever to help them get jobs. During those times, we did invite other companies to participate in it. A lot of companies have their own initiatives, so to get them into we did the heavy lifting in organizing these events, and all they had to do was show up. So just showing them the importance of ensuring that we are hiring a diverse group of individuals has been beneficial. So we've done it with a youth organization in Baltimore. So we were able to get CVS and Chipotle to participate. We only have a couple stores in Baltimore, so we couldn't take on everyone. So we knew that we had the power of the name behind the company, so we were able to encourage them to join. And we did that by, just stalking people on Indeed and inviting them to the event. And so we continue to build those relationships. So just inviting them to kind of an open office hours as well to tell them the benefits of hiring. I can tell you in the hourly place, staffing, we're all experiencing the same staffing issues. We never have enough staff and turnover's high. So if we can get an organization to help us recruit individuals, any company will be more than willing to participate. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Yemi. And here locally, we will say our employment team, we have business liaisons who reach out to companies within the community. We have companies work with us asking specifically to work with refugees for employment, but also for donation and volunteer reasons. We recently highlighted a family-run car dealership out in Manassas who donated a car to one of our families, and they worked with this chapter of Amnesty International to make sure this family got a car so that the father could drive himself to better employment opportunities in an area with limited public transportation. So that was really awesome. At the national level, Starbucks and we're part of a grant that filtered down to us to work with our refugee youth for career building, kind of looking towards the future of our future American leaders, basically. So these youth who are going to grow and start their careers in the US. I have a question that came in about highlighting the gifts that refugee workers bring. I will be following up with an email, and I can definitely include, like the New American Economy has done some research on refugee workers and resettlement and immigration in the economy. And you're also very welcome to follow up with us on any other specific questions. Lauren Kirkendall, she had some issues with connection, but she wanted to ask again, what was the number that the US will likely resettle in 2021? Mamadou, do you want to quickly say what that was and say like maybe what we can realistically expect?
As we speak, that number is set at 15,000 refugees. The upcoming incoming administration can change the ceiling, and we think that it will be set to maybe 100,000 refugees for FY21.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to show you my screen so